Jenna thought her childhood was built on love, but the truth was built on lies. She believed her mother protected her, but one hidden DNA report said otherwise. What happened next forced Dr. Phil to stop the cameras. And it all began with one sentence whispered through tears: "I'm ready to forgive my mom." Jenna's voice trembled before the words even formed. She sat across from Dr. Phil in a studio, so quiet you could hear the cameras hum. Her fingers worried the edge of a tissue, twisting it until it looked like a tiny rope ready to snap. She lifted her eyes, and in that fragile, almost silent moment, she said she had done a DNA test behind her mother's back. Not out of curiosity, but out of fear. She felt something in her life didn't fit, like a puzzle piece that had been gently shaved down to make it appear like it belonged. The crowd leaned in as she explained how the results arrived 2 months earlier. She didn't talk for days. She barely ate. She hid the envelope in her sock drawer and told no one. Even now, as she tried to tell her story on national television, her voice glitched between anger, confusion, and hope. She said the results confirmed her mother, Melissa, was not her biological parent. And the studio shifted. People whispered. Some gasped. A few held their breath like they were afraid to make a sound that would tip her over the edge. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his voice low and steady, the way someone talks to a person standing on emotional thin ice. He asked her when she first felt something wasn't right. Jenna said she had always sensed a distance. Not coldness, just secrets. Invisible walls. Locked drawers. Conversations that ended the moment she walked into a room. She loved her mother, but she never felt fully known. She said, "It was like I belonged in the house, but not in the story." As she spoke, her eyes flicked toward the backstage curtains, as if expecting someone to burst through and give her the missing piece. She described childhood moments that made her question everything, like the time she found a hospital bracelet with a different last name, or the year Melissa refused to hang baby pictures on the wall, saying, "We'll do it when things settle." But things never settled. They just stayed quiet. The emotional tension built slowly, like fog thicker by the minute. And then Jenna said the sentence that made everyone lean closer. "My mom didn't just lie. She lied for a reason I still don't understand." The air tightened. Dr. Phil noticed her hands shaking harder now. He gently placed his own hands together and asked what that reason might be. Jenna said she didn't know, but she could feel that her mother had been hiding something bigger than just her birth. And that's when it happened. A producer hurried in from the shadows and bent down beside Dr. Phil. He whispered something only he could hear. Dr. Phil's expression didn't change, but Jenna saw the flicker. Something was wrong, or maybe something was finally about to make sense. He turned back to her, voice even quieter, almost careful. "Jenna," he said, "before we go any further, there's something you haven't been told yet." The studio froze. Jenna's breath caught. The world went silent except for the thud of her heartbeat in her ears. And that was just the beginning. 3 weeks before the taping, long before the lights and the cameras and the whispers inside the studio, Jenna stood alone in her small apartment kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, as if the room itself knew something life-changing was about to happen. On the table sat a plain white envelope. No return label. No do quedaste. Just her name typed in a thin, clinical font that made her stomach twist. She stared at it for a long time, telling herself not to open it. She'd waited 6 anxious weeks for these results, but now that they were here, she wished she could rewind time, undo the test, undo the doubt, undo the feeling that had pushed her to order it in the first place. That feeling wasn't sudden. It had been building for years in small, quiet ways. The way her mother avoided eye contact when Jenna asked about her father. The way childhood photos seemed to vanish from their old albums. The way her mother locked her bedroom door at night, even though Jenna was only a kid who just wanted to know she was safe. The envelope felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Her fingertips hovered over the edge. In that moment, the entire world felt like it was waiting for her to make a decision. One small tear in that seal could unravel everything she believed about herself. As she finally opened it, she remembered something from 10 years earlier, something she hadn't allowed herself to think about until now. She had been 12 when a man knocked on their door. Tall, nervous, holding a folder to his chest. Melissa, her mother, stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Jenna remembered pressing her ear to the wood. The man's voice was muffled, but she heard one phrase clearly. She deserves to know eventually. And her mother's answer, no, not now, maybe not ever. That sentence followed her for years like a loose thread. She tried asking Melissa, but every attempt hit the same brick wall. Her mother would tighten her jaw and say, some truths hurt people more than lies ever could. As a kid, Jenna accepted that. As an adult, she realized that wasn't protection. That was fear. Back in her apartment, she unfolded the DNA report. Her breath stuttered. For a second, she thought she read it wrong. She closed her eyes, opened them again. The words didn't change. No biological relation found. Her throat tightened. Her hands went cold. The room seemed to shrink around her. She paced, reread the paper, paced again. It didn't make sense. Everything she knew, birthday stories, family traditions, the way her mother brushed her hair when she cried, didn't match what this piece of paper said. And then the second result caught her eye. A partial match. A distant relative she never knew. And beside the name, an address. Her heart jumped. She didn't know whether to cry or scream. Suddenly, memories she had buried came rushing back. The hospital bill's address to another surname. The photograph her mother cried over one night when she thought Jenna was asleep, the mysterious locked drawer in her room. The drawer. She remembered trying to open it one afternoon after school. Her mother had walked in, snatched it shut, and said, "You don't need to be in there." That night, Jenna heard her mother shredding papers in the kitchen long past midnight. The DNA report didn't just confirm something was wrong. It confirmed her mother wasn't the only one involved in the secret. Someone else out there knew the truth. Someone had lived the same lie or helped protect it. She whispered into the silence of her kitchen, "Who are you? And why did you hide me?" Her legs felt weak, so she sank onto a chair, clutching the report. For a moment, she felt like she was floating above her own life, watching it crack open. She wondered how many memories she had that weren't real. How many moments were cover stories? How many times her mother had looked at her and swallowed a truth instead of speaking it? Was Melissa a liar? Or was she a protector? Were secrets ever meant to protect a child? Or were they meant to protect the adult keeping them? The questions spiraled until she felt dizzy. She knew she couldn't hold this alone. Someone needed to hear it. Someone needed to help her uncover the truth gently, not tear her life apart. That's why she reached out to the Dr. Phil team. Not to expose her mother, but to understand her reality before it swallowed her whole. She didn't know then that the truth was already moving toward her. That the moment she opened that DNA report, someone else felt the weight shift too. Someone who had been waiting for years for the past to finally come knocking. 3 weeks later, that knock would echo through a studio. And Jenna would learn the lie was bigger than she ever imagined. The present-day studio lights felt warmer now, almost too bright, as if they were exposing more than Jenna intended to share. She sat on stage with her shoulders slightly hunched, gripping that same tissue, telling Dr. Phil about the DNA report and the memories that no longer felt like memories but warnings. Every word she spoke seemed to peel back another layer of a life she wasn't sure belonged to her anymore. Dr. Phil nodded gently, guiding her deeper into the timeline. But while Jenna talked, something happened behind her, something she couldn't see, but the audience did. A producer, breathless and pale, hurried in from the wings. He carried a small slip of paper. He waited for a moment when Jenna's gaze dropped to the floor, then leaned toward Dr. Phil and whispered. Dr. Phil's brow tightened, just slightly, but enough. He slid the note beneath his cards, keeping his expression neutral, though the gravity in the room shifted. It was the kind of shift that happens before a storm, quiet, electric warning. The note had 4 words. A man is here, and beneath that, connected to DNA results. But Jenna didn't know this yet. She continued speaking, telling the audience how she searched her mother's room the night after opening the DNA envelope. Her voice cracked as she described the moment she stumbled across a letter hidden in the back of a dresser drawer. The paper was yellow with age, folded so many times the creases felt soft like fabric. It wasn't addressed to her. That was the first thing that made her stomach twist. It was addressed about her, to someone with the initials RM. She remembered the way the air left her lungs when she read that part. RM. Those letters felt like they had been waiting for her all along. The letter talked about a child in danger, a temporary arrangement, and someone who wasn't supposed to stay. She didn't understand most of it, but one line burned itself into her memory. I promise she will never know who she really is. Jenna paused on stage, swallowing hard. The audience leaned forward as if they might fall right out of their seats. She continued, voice smaller now, scared of its own echoes. She said she didn't know if the letter meant she was taken from someone or rescued from someone. And that was the part that terrified her the most. While she spoke, the backstage door creaked again. Another producer appeared, signaling Dr. Phil that the man in the lobby refused to leave. He had paperwork. He said he had waited years for this moment. He said he had tried before. And when the producer asked for his name, he didn't hesitate. He said, "Tell them Richard Moore is here. She'll know soon enough." Back on stage, Jenna tugged at her sleeve, her voice cracking as she admitted something she hadn't said out loud yet. She said she wasn't just afraid of the truth, she was afraid of what it meant for her mother. If Melissa wasn't her biological parent, then who had written that letter? And why had her mother hidden it in a place she thought Jenna would never look? She wiped her eyes and whispered, "Was my whole life a story someone made up for me?" Her question hung in the air like a fragile chandelier, waiting to shatter. Dr. Phil took a breath. He weighed the moment carefully. He knew dropping the truth too soon could break her, but hiding it could do worse. He leaned in slightly. "Jenna," he said softly, "there's someone here today who believes he knows part of your story." Her eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The audience fell into a silence, so deep it almost hummed. Dr. Phil continued, "We're getting him checked in backstage. We need to verify who he is and why he came here. But he says he's connected to your DNA results." Jenna's hands froze. She stared ahead, not blinking. She whispered, "That man from years ago? The one with the folder?" Dr. Phil didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "We're going to find out the truth today. I promise you that." But his promise didn't calm her. It rattled her, because the truth felt like a door opening, and she didn't know if she wanted to walk through it or slam it shut. She looked toward the curtains, where shadows shifted, where footsteps echoed, where someone from her past stood waiting. And with a trembling voice, she said, "If he's here, then my whole life is about to change." The cameras zoomed in on her face. The curtains swayed, and somewhere backstage, a man signed his name on a visitor's sheet. The studio had been tense before, but now it felt like the air itself was waiting. The moment Dr. Phil said someone was here for her, Jenna's whole body stiffened. Her eyes darted toward the curtains, as if she expected a stranger to walk out at any second. She didn't know yet that Dr. Phil wasn't going to let this unfolding storm hit her on stage. Not without preparation, not without care. So he stood up quietly and touched her shoulder in that steady, grounding way of his, the way that tells someone you're safe. You're not alone. He asked the crew to pause filming. Cameras froze mid-motion. Audience members looked around, confused but respectfully silent. And with a gentle nod, he guided Jenna off stage and down a quiet hallway. Behind the scenes, everything felt colder. The hallway lights flickered with a faint buzz. The soundproofing on the walls muffled the world, like the truth they were about to face didn't want an audience just yet. Jenna whispered, "Is he dangerous?" "No," Dr. Phil replied softly. "But he has something to tell you. Something important." Her footsteps slowed. She wasn't sure she wanted important. Important felt like a trap. Important felt like the kind of truth that doesn't just change a life, it rewrites it. They stopped in front of a small private room. Dr. Phil opened the door, and Jenna stepped inside. Sitting at the table was a man in his late 50s. Gray hair, tired eyes, a worn leather folder resting beneath his hands. He stood when she walked in, but cautiously, as if sudden movements might scare her. The room felt impossibly small with him in it. "Jenna," Dr. Phil said gently, "this is Richard Moore." She stared at him. The name hit her like a faded echo she couldn't quite place. Richard cleared his throat. "You don't know me," he said, voice steady but emotional. "But I knew you. When you were a baby." Jenna's breath caught. He opened the leather folder with careful fingers, like he'd rehearsed this moment for years. Inside were papers, yellowed, stamped, some handwritten, some typed. He placed one on the table. It looked like an old social services report. "I was a social worker," he explained. "Your case file, it crossed my desk 26 years ago." She blinked, confused. "My case file." Richard nodded slowly. "You were reported as an abandoned child. Left during a crisis. No identification. No relatives claiming you. You were alone." Jenna felt her knees weaken, so Dr. Phil guided her into a chair. Richard continued. "Your mother, well, the woman you know as your mother, Melissa, she wasn't your biological family. But she didn't steal you. She didn't take you out of spite or anger." He slid another paper toward her. A statement. Signed. Dated. It said Melissa had found Jenna outside an apartment building during an emergency evacuation. She brought the baby inside. She waited for the authorities. No one came back. "She kept you safe," Richard said softly. "She tried to begin the legal process to adopt you, but the paperwork got tangled. The system failed her. Failed you. She was scared they'd take you away and place you in a facility or with someone who didn't know you. So she stopped trying. She hid the letters. She avoided the follow-ups." Jenna felt her chest tighten. "She lied." "Yes," he said, "but not because she didn't love you. Because she did." Jenna's voice cracked. "Why didn't she tell me?" "Because she was ashamed," Richard whispered. "She felt she had broken rules, even though she saved your life." Jenna ran her thumb along the edge of the paperwork. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't sure if she wanted to hug her mother or scream at her. Possibly both. But Richard wasn't finished. "There's something else," he said, hesitating. "Something I couldn't tell Melissa at the time. Something she never knew." Jenna slowly lifted her eyes. "What else?" Richard opened one final envelope, the only one that looked newer than the rest. He said quietly, "Your biological family wasn't missing. They were looking for you." Silence swallowed the small room. Jenna's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "My family looked for me?" "Yes," Richard said. "They didn't abandon you. They were separated from you. And by the time they found out where you were, years had passed, and the system wouldn't release any information." Jenna felt the world tilt. Her past wasn't just complicated. It was layered with love, loss, and misdirection no one had meant to cause. She looked up, tears spilling. "I need to talk to my mother. Now." Dr. Phil met her gaze and nodded. "We'll bring her out, and we'll do it together." The room felt heavier, fuller, ready for the reckoning that was coming. This wasn't just a conversation. It was the moment her entire identity was about to shift again. "Take a deep breath," Dr. Phil said softly, "because your mother is waiting." Back on stage, the atmosphere didn't just feel heavy, it felt suspended, as if the studio itself was holding its breath, waiting for two lives to collide with the truth that had been circling them for decades. When Jenna stepped out from the hallway and returned to her seat, her eyes weren't the same. They were swollen, searching, bracing. She looked older somehow, not in age, but in awareness. A few seconds later, Melissa, the only mother Jenna had ever known, walked slowly onto the stage. She looked fragile yet determined, rubbing her palms together the way she did when she was nervous. When she sat across from Jenna, she didn't reach out, almost as if she wasn't sure she still had the right. Dr. Phil took a seat between them, but he gave them space. Emotional breathing room. Enough room for the truth to finally take shape. Jenna spoke first, her voice soft but trembling. "Mom, did you ever think about telling me?" Melissa's chin quivered. She lifted her hand to her cheek, catching a tear that escaped before she could stop it. "Every day," she whispered. "Every single day of your life." Her voice broke. "But I was scared. Terrified. I thought if you knew everything, you'd hate me. Or the system would punish me. Or someone would take you away." Jenna swallowed. "So you chose silence." Melissa nodded, shoulders shaking. "I did. And I shouldn't have. I know that now." The audience sat like statues. Even the cameras felt quieter. Dr. Phil gently stepped in. Melissa, Jenna found the letter signed RM, and she found the old papers. What was the truth behind all of that? Melissa wiped her face. I was 25, she said. A neighbor came banging on doors one night. The building alarms were going off. The hallways were full of smoke. I found a baby outside one of the apartments, crying alone. Nobody came back. Hours passed. The police were spread thin because the whole block was chaotic. She paused, pressing her hand to her chest. I took you inside. I wrapped you in my blanket. I waited for someone to claim you. No one did. Not that night. Not the next morning. Jenna stared at her. Not angry. Not yet. Just absorbing. Melissa continued. I wanted to adopt you the right way. But the paperwork was complicated. And honestly, I was afraid they'd think I took you on purpose. Social services sent letters. RM, Richard Moore, came by. But when he asked questions I couldn't answer, I panicked. She looked directly into Jenna's eyes. I wasn't trying to lie. I was trying to keep you. The simplicity of the words made them heavier, not lighter. Jenna's lips parted, her breath shaky. Why didn't you trust me with the truth? Melissa's shoulders collapsed. Because I didn't trust myself. Dr. Phil leaned closer, his voice a steady anchor. Melissa, you've lived with this weight for over 20 years. What do you want your daughter to hear today, right now, without fear? Melissa took a trembling breath. I wasn't ready to tell you, but I was always ready to love you. She reached out a hand, but let it hover, not wanting to cross a boundary Jenna didn't offer. I didn't steal you. I didn't trap you. I tried to save you. And I'm so sorry that my fear turned into secrets. You deserve better. The line hit the room like a wave of warmth and guilt and painful honesty all mixed together. Jenna sat still for a long moment. Her chest rose and fell. Her hand shook. She felt pulled between betrayal and compassion, between the facts and the feelings. She had come here expecting anger, but hearing her mother speak made her feel something else too. Empathy. She thought about the small moments. Her mother packing lunches at 5 a.m., sewing Halloween costumes from scratch, staying by her bedside during every fever, cheering at every school play, even when the auditorium was freezing. Those memories didn't disappear just because the truth had shifted. And maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to break when the truth appeared. Maybe it just had to stretch. Jenna leaned forward. Her voice cracked in a tiny, fragile way. Mom, I don't know what comes next. I don't know what this means for our relationship or for my identity. But I know one thing. The entire studio leaned in. She reached out slowly, hesitant, scared, hopeful. I'm ready to forgive my mom. The cameras froze. Even Dr. Phil went still, absorbing the moment with the weight it deserved. A producer backstage signaled to pause filming. Not because anything was wrong, but because the rawness was too real to rush through. In that instant, forgiveness didn't look like closure. It looked like a beginning. The studio never returned to its original rhythm after Jenna whispered those 7 life-altering words. Even after the cameras were turned off and the lights dimmed, the feeling lingered, soft, heavy, human. Some moments on this show become headlines, but others stay quiet, settling into the heart like a reminder of what forgiveness actually looks like. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It isn't excusing. It's courage. It's choosing to move forward even when the past feels uneven beneath your feet. Jen and Melissa didn't walk out of that studio as a perfect family. They walked out as 2 people finally willing to tell the truth and willing to hold each other again, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not the reveal, not the drama, but the choice to rebuild. If this story moved you, you're not alone. Family secrets, DNA surprises, identity questions. These things shape more lives than we talk about. If you've lived through something similar, or if you just need a place to put your feelings, share your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear your story too. And if you want more stories that remind us how truth, compassion, and second chances can change everything, there's another episode waiting for you right here.